I was distracted, like life moved very quickly after the accident. They're pointing weapons at me. In my mind, I'm thinking, I was not driving. It was very clear that he passed away. It was very clear that there was nothing we could do to help him. We go from arguing to complete silence. Like, it's like we knew. I thought motherhood was my escape and would be my escape. So then I started another business and then I delved into that. I was running away from the problem, but the problem was with me because it was in my own body. Like, it was in my own body. I kept running away from it, but it was there. It was there permanently. It's okay that you're alive. You're alive. You know, you're well. You may not be in the best mental state, and a broken relationship with myself, most of all, to learn that this is okay. You are okay. I forgive you. And I'm really proud of myself.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the Better Left Unsaid podcast with me, your host, Jessiara. Better Left Unsaid is a podcast that opens up about conversations we are often afraid of having. So my name is Jessiara. I'm a 23-year-old content creator, speaker, and disability advocate. I found that there weren't enough spaces online where we could come to open up and speak about real topics, real conversations that matter, beyond the aesthetics of social media. Real people, real stories, and real conversations. And I'm here to walk you through all of that and learn with you. Tackling topics like mental health, disability, parenting, motherhood, personal development, and navigating adulthood. As we explore the stories behind the truths and the triumphs, offering an intimate, safe space for real conversations. Some things are better left unsaid, but not here. So let's talk about it.
Okay, yes, I've definitely been thinking about it, and whilst I do think some things are better left unsaid, I'm just not about that, like, not at all. Hi everyone, welcome to episode 1 of the Better Left Unsaid podcast. I'm so excited to finally have these conversations with you guys. I have been wanting to have a podcast like this for months and months and months. If you're new here, let me introduce myself. Hello, my name is Jessiara. I'm 23, originally from London. I now live in Manchester with my little family. I'm a mother of 2 and I'm a content creator. I cannot believe we are doing this, you guys. Like, I have been itching to do this. By the way, if you like listening to my voice, you can also see my pretty face. I've done my makeup for you guys today. We also have episodes on YouTube as well, so if you do want to view it on video and watch me on the big screen, then you can check this out on my YouTube channel, which will be linked in the description bar. I am so excited to take you guys along this first season of Better Left Unsaid podcast. We have some amazing guests coming on the podcast to share their stories and giving you guys some life lessons. So let me tell you guys a little bit of what you can expect with this podcast. So this podcast is a space where we can dive into personal topics like mental health, disability, motherhood, parenting, and so many other struggles that we deal with as adults. I want this community to feel like you guys can open up and share your own personal stories, as well as learning from our guests and myself, sharing a range of so many intimate topics that a lot of us shy away from talking about in the real world. And in this first episode, I have the privilege of telling you guys my story. Many of you will follow me on social media, and I have shared my story a couple of times. I have gone on podcasts to talk about my story, but never in as much detail as I'm about to do it here. So this is a little exclusive for you guys, but I wanted to sit down and just give you guys a rundown on who I am and tell you guys a little bit of my story before we continue on this season. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, sit back, relax, grab a snack, and let's get into the conversation. Before we continue, just a little disclaimer that this episode does include sensitive topics, so if it's not something you want to hear right now, please look after yourself and you can come back and watch another day. I'm going to put my feet up for this one. I want to tell you guys a little bit about my background, my childhood, just so you get a bit of understanding where I came from. So I was born in Hackney, East London, specifically Homerton Hospital. A lot of you would know if you follow me on my socials that I am adopted. I was adopted when I was about 6 years old, and before that I had quite a difficult childhood, I guess, just in terms of the environment I was in with my parents. I didn't have the most secure home growing up. In all honesty, it was quite unstable in many ways. My mother was struggling with her mental health and my dad was doing what my dad did. You know, it was just me, my 2 younger sisters and my older brother in this tiny flat in Hackney. And honestly, like I said, I don't remember that much, but the memories that I do have aren't the best. However, I know that my parents did their best to look after us. We were a crazy bunch.
but it did come a time where we were sent to foster care, and we lived in various different foster homes all across the country. I remember living in massive houses, tiny houses, being cramped in a really small bedroom with just me and my sisters, to having, you know, a whole room to ourselves and me having my own bedroom as the older sibling. Like, we had such a fun time in foster care, but I feel like, don't get it twisted, it's not like Tracy Beaker. Like, it is hard, and a lot of the times I feel like I was misunderstood as a young Black female when we lived with families that didn't look like us, let's just say that. Very lucky to be adopted by family. I was adopted by my aunt, and I will refer to her as my aunt going forward in this episode, just so you know. She is truly the most remarkable woman in this entire world. Like, I feel like anyone would say that about their parent figure, or their parents, or their mum, or their dad. Like, my aunt is really something special. She was at a point in her life when she already had kids of her own. They were all grown up, you know, they all had kids of their own and everything like that. She saw us in care. She saw that we were family, and she took us in. Let me not get emotional in the first 5 minutes of this episode, but my aunt truly is something special. So when we moved in with her, my childhood was so fun. Like, we had holidays, we went to the Caribbean, we went to Antigua, like every summer. It was so fun. Going from primary school to secondary school was a massive transition for me. I was bullied quite a lot because of my weight. I was quite a chubby kid. I was quite big, and I did rugby, and I feel like it was really fitting. Rugby and boxing was my escape. You know, it was my way of regaining that power back, I guess, from the people that bullied me. And when I was about 12, 13 years old in year 7, I went to an all-girls school in East London. And this all-girls school was quite notorious for being just quite bad. You know, it was not a good school in terms of the teaching, in terms of the girls. It was just notorious for having a bad reputation, essentially. And I only stayed in this school for a year, and that year was the worst year of my life. Like, it was a living hell. It was a living hell, and the girls were not kind to me. You know, I tried to fit in. I was with the popular girls or whatever, and because I looked different, because I sounded quite posh, I just stuck out like a sore thumb. And when you do stand out, when you do look different or act different or are different to your peers, you're an easy target, unfortunately, and I had to learn that the hard way. Anyway, it got to about 15, 16 years old. I started YouTube. It was so fun. Honestly, I was so terrified to start YouTube, but also excited, because I needed a space for me to just speak and be myself and share my love for fashion and just document my teenage years, I guess. But also at this time, I did notice a shift in my mental health. I went from being very happy-go-lucky, nothing could tear me down, to just very, very depressed, very upset for no reason. Like, I didn't have a particular reason to be this sad and this in my feels. Like, I was very easily triggered by everything and anything, and my friends would have to tiptoe around me with certain things that they said, and I just wasn't myself. I was not myself. I had a double life, I will say. I had a double life when I was 16. I had my group of friends in school who I hung around with in school and sometimes outside of school. You know, on the weekends we'd go to each other's houses, that type of thing. But then I had a group of friends outside of school who were older than me. They were 18 plus years old, all the way up to like 26. And this group of friends that I had wasn't the best influence. They were not the best influence, and I will put my hand up and say, like, I knew that they weren't. However, I think at that age, things like that is really exciting to you, isn't it? When you see a group of people who's like quite bad and quite naughty and they just seem rebellious and you're like, oh, that's so cool, I want to be involved with them. That was me. And at the time I had a best friend. His name was ᴏᴘᴇ. He tried to steer me away from this group of people and introduced me to his group of friends. And this is how I got into like house music and EDM music. I went to festivals with this group of friends, with ᴏᴘᴇ, and honestly, my best years was 15 and 16 years old, 17 years old. It was honestly amazing because I just felt fearless. I felt like I was on top of the world, and yes, I feel like I was living a double life with those two different groups of friends, but it was honestly, like, when I look back, I'm so happy that I did the things that I did with them. Nothing illegal, don't worry. And then this story takes a bit of a turn. when I got to 16 years old, it was the summer, July time, and, you know, we just finished our GCSEs. All of my friends were like going on holiday or like going away and were doing things. Like my group of friends that was in school, they were doing things together. I was very much like, I don't want to do that. Like my friends outside of school are doing X, Y, and Z, so I would rather be with them. One of these days in summer, I had two friends outside of school who went to a different school than me, and they were telling me, oh, there's this party in this guy's house in the middle of the countryside, massive house. His family's gone away for the summer. He's got the house to himself. Do you want to come to this party? I said, of course. I was like, yeah, of course I want to go to this party. A guy I liked was there, and I was like, I want to go. Like, of course I want to go. So I gave my aunt a kiss goodbye. I didn't tell her where I was going. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. It's weird because when this day came, I felt a bit off. And I think one thing you guys will learn about me going forward in this podcast is I have a very strong intuition, a very strong gut feeling. So my gut the whole day was telling me something's off. Like I didn't know what, but I felt a bit uncomfortable. I had a little bit of anxiety in my stomach. And I don't know why. I got to my friend's house and there was my two friends. We will call them Grace and Ethan. So I'm with Grace and Ethan. I'm at Grace's house and I see another guy there. Let's call him Jake. So I meet Jake. First time meeting Jake. I've never met Jake before. I'm like, hi, my name's Jess. And immediately greeting him, he smelled of like beer. And I didn't like that. But I just thought, you know, he's probably been drinking a few hours ago. It's probably still on him. Little did I know he was still actively drinking as we got into the car. Jake was 18 at the time and I was 16. Grace and Ethan were 17. Jake's at the front. He's driving. Next to him is Ethan. Behind the passenger seat, behind Ethan, is me. And then next to me, behind the driver's seat, is Grace. So we start driving. We're driving down the motorway, driving down country lanes. And it's just so, just think of like the intro to like a sappy teenage movie of like a convertible car, roof is down, hair's blowing in the wind, blasting music, singing out the top of our lungs and just having time of our life. We're going down this very long road in the countryside, very long road, and there's almost no cars passing. There's a couple of cars passing every couple of miles, but essentially no cars. I notice that Jake is drinking quite a lot. Like I was on my phone and I was talking to Grace most of the time. Like me and Grace were just in our own little bubble and then the boys were talking at the front. So I glanced up from my phone because me and Grace are taking pictures, you know, we're having a good time. And then we noticed that Jake is just not with it. Like we could tell he was drunk. To keep it short and simple, he was drunk. And Grace was like, Jake, like, come on, like, you can drink more when you get to the party. Let's just get there in one piece, please. And I remember we were quite jokey about it, like, having banter back and forth. And then I go to reach for Jake's beer can, and then I see a bottle of vodka that's, like, next to the gear stick. So I just go to reach for that, and he just roars at me, like, Jess, what the F do you think you're doing? Don't take my drink. Who the F do you think you are? And I'm like, oh my gosh. Anyway, I still take his beer and I ask Ethan to grab the vodka from the side where Jake can reach. Anyway, Jake's not happy about this. So he starts asking for his drinks back. And then we're like, do you even know where you're going? Because we took a wrong turn. I looked at my phone at the maps. We're going the complete opposite way. And I'm like, do you even know where you're going? And he's like, no, give me your phone. My heart's racing. Take a deep breaths. In this moment in time, we see this massive 16-wheeler truck, like as in the biggest truck you could ever imagine, just in front of us going the opposite way. And we can see it. I can see it in the distance. The rest of us can see it in the distance. Jake is looking back at me. He's like, give me your phone, give me your phone. And I'm here telling him to turn around. I'm like, turn around. Bearing in mind, you guys, we're going 70, 80, 90. We're going really, really fast. In the middle. We're not even on our side of the road. We're not on the left side. We're in the middle of the road. And in a split second, we go from arguing to complete silence. Like, it's like we knew. It's like we knew something was about to happen. And I kid you guys not, in like 5 seconds, it was very fast. I unbuckled my seatbelt and I threw myself under Ethan's seat. You know when there's a gap where you can put like bags on your foot? I shoved myself as far as I could go into that chair. And I was really small. Like at 16, I was very skinny. I was very slim. I was very, very small. I could fit into very small spaces. So I guess this was my advantage, because in that moment, Jake turns around. We're in the middle of the road. The 16-wheeler, obviously, he can't move as quickly as we can. So Jake swerves the car. And as the car swerves, because we're going so fast, we start flipping and flipping and flipping and flipping. The car flips so much. And just silent. It's just silent in the car. Like, I don't know how long passed before I regained consciousness. We were upside down, so we were on our roof, and I had to crawl out the window of the car. I remember crawling out. I dislocated my shoulder, so my shoulder was killing me. And I remember I was like holding my head, and I'm like, guys, I'm like, Grace, Ethan, Grace, like, guys, like, I had no idea we just crashed. I was completely out of it. I thought we probably just bumped the car or bumped the truck. Little did I know, the truck was a couple miles down the road. He stopped at this point. We flipped. The car was in a ditch. And I come crawling out the car. I'm on the road at this point, and I sit on the floor, and I'm like, wait a minute. Like, very quickly things started adding up, and I was like, wait a minute. And I turned, I looked behind me. I see the car like sticking out of the ditch. And then to the right of me, I see Ethan. And then to the left of me, I see Grace. And I run to Grace. I check on her. She has a pulse. She's breathing. But her legs were like, they weren't in a good way. The same with Ethan. I went to go check on Ethan. He was breathing. He was like kind of in and out of consciousness. He was like talking to me. He was like, Jess, is Grace okay? Like, are you okay? And I was like, Ethan, I'm fine. You just, just relax. I didn't want to stress anyone out. Well, I didn't want to stress Ethan out, because he was the only one that was like awake and talking. And then I think, where is Jake? So at this point, the truck driver is like running towards me. He's on the phone and he's like yelling at me, are you okay? Are you okay? And I'm like, 1 second, I can't find the driver. So I run back to the ditch. Massive trigger warning here. I don't want to upset anyone. I'm not going to give any graphic details out of respect for Jake and his family. But all I will say is it was very clear that he passed away. It was very clear that there was nothing we could do to help him. Yeah. So when I saw him, I like came back out the ditch and I started coughing, I started screaming, I started wailing. I was just, I was not with it at all. And then it was probably like 20 minutes that passed before like police and ambulance and stuff arrived. And I just remember being in a ball, you know, when your legs are just curled up and your like head is in your lap. That's how they found me. And this is a part of the story I've never said before, because honestly, if I'm so honest with you guys, I just don't know how I'm going to be perceived after this. I don't know what the stance is going to be on this, but this is my story and I'm going to tell it how it happened in my own words, in my own way. So I don't know how long had passed at this point. It was probably about 20 minutes, maybe more, where I just heard sirens very quickly and they were getting closer and closer. And then after the sirens, I didn't put my head up. So after the sirens, all I hear is put your hands up, put your hands up. And I'm like, they're not talking to me, are they? They were talking to me. So I lift my head up and I see, I kid you not, like 5 police cars, like all dotted around the scene of the crash. and they're like pointing weapons at me. They're pointing weapons at me. In my mind, I'm thinking, I was not driving. I did nothing wrong. But I think because I was the only one there, you can see my two friends behind me. You can see the car in the ditch, and I'm the only one there with head down. Of course, it looks like I was the driver. I was in shock. So I didn't do anything. I did not do anything. I didn't put my hand up. I didn't stand up. I didn't say anything. And then they were just all yelling at me, and it became very blurry. And then I had a female officer approach me and like bend down to me. She was like, my dear, were you driving? Like, were you the driver? And I was like, no, I wasn't the driver. And she was like, where is the driver? And I just turned around and I pointed behind me. And then they lowered their weapons, and she helped me up. She was walking me to the ambulance. And as I was passing the officers, they all like put their hands on my shoulder, put their hands on my head, like rubbed my hair. And they were like apologizing because that was just another level of trauma that I had to experience afterwards. That wasn't fun. As you can imagine, it wasn't fun. It's not something I would wish upon my worst enemy, honestly. To be in a crash, nearly dying, and then having weapons pointed at you by police officers, like, it's not fun. But I went to an ambulance. They checked me over. My shoulder was dislocated. Other than that, I was okay. I was cut and bruised, but I was okay. Being diagnosed with complex PTSD was something I expected. However, I didn't do the work to get myself better or to help myself at all. I had my birthday. I turned 17. And then in September, I started college. So I had counselling, I had therapy, I had police officers basically in my care. So they would come to the school, come to my college like every day just to check on me, especially the female officer, because she was the one that helped me. She really was a massive impact in my healing journey, going forward at least. I remember speaking to a therapist and she was like, darling, you have complex PTSD, because I told her what I was experiencing after the crash. I was experiencing night terrors and I was reliving this accident over and over and over again. I would see things from the accident that I didn't want to see. I would hear things that I didn't want to hear, and I wasn't in a good way. I couldn't get in a car for weeks. She described me as scarily normal in our last session together, because the way I was communicating with her was how I'm communicating with you guys. Like, I was just talking like nothing happened. She was like, Jess, you need to do some healing, because if you don't, things can manifest and it can get really bad. You can develop things. Your body can really react to this accident if you don't help yourself. And me being 17, I'm like, no, leave me alone. Like, huh? What are you talking about? So I didn't heal. I didn't do therapy. I didn't want help. Everyone that was trying to send help my way, I was like, leave me alone. I don't want help. And I've always been this way. I've always been the type of person that likes to deal with her own things in my own way. I want to deal with it by myself. I want to deal with it quickly and get it over with and then move on. So the fact I had so many people around me was so suffocating. I know now, being much older and understanding the accident more, that they helped me. They really did. However, I didn't help myself. I didn't allow myself to get the help. So I went throughout college basically just acting like things never happened. And then ᴏᴘᴇ passed away. You remember ᴏᴘᴇ, when I mentioned him earlier, he passed away due to suicide, and I was there when it happened. So that was just an added thing in my PTSD that really made healing very hard, because bad things kept happening and I was like, why is this happening to me? And then September 2019, I moved to Manchester for university. I had the time of my life. I was distracted. Like, life moved very quickly after the accident. And then in March 2020, I came home for lockdown, and I was pregnant. So I left uni. I came back home. I moved back home. I had my daughter in November 2020. And here we are today. I'm a mum of two. And it's only this year, well, since the anniversary of the accident, telling myself it's okay to not be okay, and that it's okay not to be completely healed from this accident, because this was a very bad accident. I think you guys can imagine. I don't have to explain to you guys how bad it was. It was a bad accident. However, I want to go into the last section of this episode and talk about my healing journey and what happened to me after this accident. So if you don't know my story, in August of 2022, I woke up from a nap having a seizure.
I've never had a seizure before this. It was terrifying because I was like, am I dying? Like, what's going on? And then I proceeded to be in hospital for a week, being treated for all sorts of different things. I had every single test done under the sun because I was on my deathbed. I was not in a good way. I barely remember this hospital stay. Like, I only remember like 2 days, and those 2 days was horrible because the treatment at the hospital was just so poor, and I wouldn't wish that upon anybody. But after this, I spoke with a neurologist, and he said, Jess, you have functional neurological disorder. And I was like, what is this? And he said, FND tends to happen in people that have unresolved trauma or unhealed trauma, or just have trauma in general, and their body basically takes on that trauma. And I thought, ding, 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 that's exactly what the therapist said to me would happen. And I just didn't listen. Guys, I really had to forgive myself. I had to forgive myself because I had survivor's guilt. Like, I was so pissed off with the fact that I was the only person that came out of this accident okay. Jake passed away, the driver passed away, my friend Grace and Ethan, they're both alive, they're both well, but unfortunately, Grace is paralyzed. She is in a wheelchair, and so is Ethan. So I am the only one out of the four of us that is doing okay. And I say okay in quotation marks for those of you that are listening, because I do have this disability now. I do have this condition. And I think some would argue, well, you brought it upon yourself. You know, you didn't do the healing. You didn't do therapy. So this is kind of your fault. I have forgiven myself. And I had to forgive myself because, guys, I was beating myself up for years. After I had my daughter 4 years ago, I was like, right, you're a mum now. Let's dive into motherhood. Let's do this motherhood thing, you know? And then we had sleepless nights, and then she had tantrums, and then I didn't bond with her because I had PTSD about the accident, about my birth. Like, I thought motherhood was my escape and would be my escape. So then I started another business, and then I delved into that, and then I didn't want to do that anymore because it made me depressed and anxious and stressed. So I did something else, and I was running away from the problem, but the problem was with me because it was in my own body. Like, it was in my own body. I kept running away from it, but it was there. It was there permanently. And I didn't learn that literally until this year, the beginning of 2024. I had to tell myself, Jess, it's okay that you're alive. You're alive. You know, you're well. You may not be in the best mental state. You may have seizures. You may have chronic pain. You may be tired all the time. You may have to use a walking aid. You may have to even get a wheelchair now. Like, you will have bad days, but you're here and you're alive. And I had to forgive myself because I was like, why am I the only one that's here? And even speaking to Grace a couple of months ago, guys, she was like, Jess, you're so strong. Like, you've been through so much, and you're still here. So I want to say all that just to say, if you have been through something and you've been through hell and back, yet you are still smiling, yet you still show up for people, yet people still call you when they need help, you still go into work, you still go to school, you still show up for yourself, you are doing amazing and you're doing the damn thing. And I wish someone told me that. Because it took me the death of my best friend, the death of the driver in the accident, several broken relationships and friendships because of this accident, and a broken relationship with myself most of all, to learn that this is okay. You are okay. I forgive you. And I'm really proud of myself. Can I just say that? I'm proud of myself and I'm proud of you. Like, I know that we go through so much ish in our life that you go to bed at the end of the day and you think, why am I still here? Like, how am I still here? How am I still fighting? And that is because I think a lot of us, especially in this day and age, we go through so much. We're just like, what's the next thing? On to the next thing. What's next, you know? And I think that's a horrible mindset to have. We'll talk about how to heal that in future episodes, but it's just something that I think we all need to heal from. It's like a collective healing, social media and everything like that. But again, story for another day. Have so much I want to give. I have so much I want to say. I have so much I want to tell you guys. And it starts with this. It starts with this episode. It starts with this podcast. So I want to say thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. I'm just so happy you're here. I'm so happy you've listened. I'm so happy that you guys have shown me so much love and support recently. And if you're new,
Hi, please join on the journey. The season's going to be so much fun, you guys. I have so many amazing guests who are going to come on and share their stories, share their advice, share their wise words. For updates and sneak peeks, please follow us on Better Left Unsaid podcast down below and all our social handles down below in the description bar. I have been your host, Jessiara, and remember that some things are better left unsaid, but not here, so we're going to talk about it. See you guys in the next episode. Bye.
Okay, yes, I've definitely been thinking about it, and whilst I do think some things are better left unsaid, I'm just not about that, like, not at all.